ओम परतत्वे सदा लीनो रामकृष्ण समाज्ञया यो धर्म स्थापन रतो वीरेशं तं नमाम्यहम्. We have been studying Swami Vivekananda's Jnana Yoga, and we are in the second lecture. The name of the second lecture is The Real Nature of Man. The first lecture was Necessity of Religion, and the second lecture is based upon Kathopanishad. So Swamiji starts with the question of death, that however we may cling to our senses, but the death does come. And then we question, it is like a edge of the precipice of the mountain, after which there is a yawning chasm. And then we question, is this the end of all? So whatever we struggle through the life ends. Whether it is education or wealth or expertise or whatever, it ends at the point of death. So is it real? Does something survive the appearance of death? And then we find that in this body which dies, there is something superior to it, and it is called mind, it is called bright body, because it is relatively less gross. The shine of the Atman is little more on it. But then it has a form, subtler form. So, my mind, your mind. And so it cannot be permanent. So, higher than that, there has to be something which is absolutely permanent, and that can be permanent which is absolutely unchanging, and that can be permanent which is infinite, and infinite is not only vast in space, because at the time of pralaya the space will also vanish. Infinite is not only time, because in pralaya there is no count of time also. So infinite is that which has no second, which is one without a second. So though in the beginning, above the body and above the mind, we found a soul, my Atman, your Atman, but when we try to find the real nature of that Atman, we find that it is only consciousness, it is not matter. And so we came to know that it has to be infinite. And then we came to know that it cannot be different in me and you. And so, this is how Swamiji has built up the Advaita through simple reasoning, starting from the point of death. Now, because we have not thought about it, if we allow our reason to proceed, seeing death, then the end point will be nihilism. But Swamiji says, I have not seen anybody nihilist in this world, because it is easy to talk. So to believe that everything is zero is not possible. And then we try to find the thing which persists, and then we came to this. Now, problems come because our so-called individuality will be lost. This I which is ever changing is not individual, Swamiji is telling us, because it is changing. And giving the extreme examples, should a drunkard not give up his wine? Should a thief not given up stealing? So those qualities which we think is our qualities are not actually the qualities of this self or Atman. And so this I itself will have to be given up. In the necessity of religion, Swamiji had talked about ethics also, that all ethics, if you find the rationale of ethics, we come to this same one without a second. And so Now, in this real nature of man, proceeding like this, in between came the question of language. Because in ancient scriptures, the language is not like the modern man. And the modern man rejects it simply because of language. So Swamiji says that language is an attempt to express. What it is expressing is more important. And so Swamiji says that behind that, if you call it superstition, was God. And behind the modern superstition, it is only lucre or filth. So mythology has taught us that the whole thing is in cycles. That means involution and then evolution. And so, another problem Swamiji has taken up is how this mind came. Is body the creator of the mind, or mind is the creator of the body? If body is the creator of the mind, the question comes, who created the body? When we eat the food, it becomes the body. Who creates it? So, Swamiji takes in general the subtler things, energy, up to consciousness. That force, Swamiji calls it, which creates the body, is in the body as soul. So, body creates the mind is wrong. There is superior to body which creates the body and becomes the mind or ultimately the Atman. So, that is more rational as Swamiji has demonstrated. Otherwise, the question remains unanswered. Now coming to this and the main question now remains is, people are frightened when they are told this. And because they feel their individuality will be lost. Then Swamiji says we are not individuals yet. We are struggling towards that individuality. And so, the question is, this is a very big para. We are taking up the para starting with, we are not individuals yet. We are not individuals yet is a very big paragraph which we are reading. And a beautiful expression from Swamiji is that evolution of matter or nature and manifestation of Atman. So Atman is not changing, but less of its manifestation we see. And when the nature adjusts properly, nature is our body and our mind. So when our body and mind adjust properly, then the soul manifests more. That is the theme Swamiji has taken up, and we are read up to this. You did not change at all. Swamiji has given an example. Suppose there is a screen hiding you from me, and the hole is there and little is available. And when the hole grows, when the whole screen disappears, I can see all of you. So you have not changed, I have not changed, the screen availability has changed. So consciousness changes and we find the soul is manifested. Up till this we had read. It was the whole that was evolving and you were gradually manifesting yourself. So it is with the spirit. Spirit means without the body, that is called spirit. Now, next position. In the same paragraph, no perfection is going to be attained. I hope you have come to this point. We had marked last time that we had read up to, so it is with the spirit. So after that, in my small book it is page 37. Those who are reading complete work should find out. No perfection is going to be attained. Very important point of Jnana Yoga. It is simply change of consciousness. If we attain something, it will be lost also. If we are not that, and if we attain something, that will be lost also. You are already free and perfect. So that is the real nature of man. In the real nature of man, the freedom and perfection is already there. What are these ideas of religion and God and searching for the hereafter? Why we search for God? Why we want religion? Why we are thinking of life after that? Because the reality is inherent in us. Because the divinity is inherent in us. Because the divinity is our very real nature. And it is covered. We are not able to see it. And so this search also is a result of the potential divinity of man. Because real nature of man is Brahman, so this desire to find it in the outside world also happens. Why does man look for a God? Why does man in every nation, in every state of society, want a perfect ideal somewhere? Those who do not believe in God always conceive of a perfect ideal somewhere. Why? Because that is our real nature. And because we are not able to see it, so we search for it. In every state of society, want a perfect ideal somewhere, either in man, in God or elsewhere. Either we conceive of a perfected man, or we conceive of the perfect God, or abstract somewhere, but perfection we always conceive. Because that idea is within you, that reality is within you. It was your own heart beating and you did not know. You were mistaking it for something external. This is the beautiful way of presenting that all our searches, whether it is science or education or sports or anything, are struggle to find out something which is perfect, because that is our real nature. It is the God within you, within your own self, that is propelling you to seek for Him, to realize Him. Seek for Him, realize Him. That means we find God, but we have to, that God should become real to us. Realization means an idea becomes real. That is called realization. So that is what we are seeking for. Philosophers seek for ideas only sometimes. We are not satisfied with the idea. That should become our life. So all this struggle is due to the inherent divinity. After long searching here and there, in temples and in churches, in earths and in heavens, at last you come back, completing the circle from where you started to your own soul, and find that He for whom you have been seeking all over the world, for whom you have been weeping and praying in churches and temples, on whom you were looking as the mystery of all mysteries, shrouded in the clouds, is nearest of the near, is your own self, the reality of your life, body and soul. Reality of the body is the spirit. Reality of soul, that means mind, that is also self. Reality of your life, prana, is also the reality which is consciousness. That is your own nature. So what is this Jnana Yoga about? What have we to do? Assert it, manifest it. Assert it, manifest it. What is assert? Now, in Vedanta we hear of Shravan, Manan and Nididhasan. We hear from the Guru or the scriptures of our real nature. But we are not sure of it. So it comes Manan. All our thinking has to be revised. All our feelings have to be revised. Our very will has to be revised in the light of the truth which we have heard. So we become sure of our reality. That is called asserting. Asserting means being sure of our reality amidst all the nonsensical ideas which are superimposed, whether by society or media or our own wrong notions. When we have heard the truth, we understand that our real nature is this. But then that should enter every moment of our thought, every moment of our feelings. That is called assertion. So, we have to assert it because the nature is saying something else, because the media is showing something else, because my friends are telling me something else, because even the religion which I have heard from childhood is telling me something else. But I should be absolutely sure about it. That is called assertion. Assertion here is a result of real manan, and then manifest it. When we become absolutely sure of it, even then the old sanskaras do not die. And there are old sanskaras of bhoga, enjoyment. And so comes what is called nididhyasana, or the real meditation. So, the innermost divinity should shine in our life. That is called realization. So here in these two words, assert it and manifest it, Swamiji has clearly told about Vedantic Manan and Nididhyasana leading to realization. This is the work to be done. Not to become pure. You are pure already. So this purity is a very relative term. Unless we purify our mind, we do not get this idea at all. And so, to conceive of this idea, we require purification. But once the idea has been conceived, Atman is not to be purified. Atman is pure by nature. Otherwise, all these things will be nonsense. Non-changing, non-corrupted, infinite, one without a second, all these ideas will not stand if Atman requires purification. So, in the assertion, it is essential to know that Atman is ever pure. You are not to be perfect, you are that already. This assertion itself, Swamiji is showing now. Perfection or Purnatva is our very real nature, and that is why we are struggling for it. And first we must be absolutely sure that that is our real nature. Nature is like that screen which is hiding the reality beyond. Nature, again I tell you, is our bodily habits, our mental habits. This is called our nature. And that is the screen, because I consciousness has entered. So that is the screen which is hiding our real nature. Nature is like that screen which is hiding the reality beyond. Beyond means we have to transcend this. This is not our real nature. This body and mind is not our real nature. So we have to transcend it. That is called reality beyond. Now how? Every good thought that you think or act upon is simply tearing the veil. Here comes the value of karma and right thinking. That if the thinking is in the right direction, one of the layers of the veil goes away. If our activity which creates an impression on the mind, if that activity is according to the Advaita, then it purifies the mind. That is what is to be done. Every good thought that you think or act upon is simply tearing the veil, as it were. And the purity, the infinity, the God behind manifests itself more and more. So God behind here means Sarva Shaktiman. So all the power is within us, the purity is our real nature, infinity is our real nature, So by the right assertion and manifestation, it comes out. This is the whole history of man. History of man means not when a king was born and a king was died. History of man means the meaning of the struggle in man's life. When we see some struggle in man's life, whatever be the struggle, starting from the lowest man to the highest sadhaka, all this struggle, the meaning is this, that the infinity is trying to manifest itself. Finer and finer become the veil. That means purer and purer become the mind. More and more of the light behind shines forth. We start feeling or experiencing our Atman to some extent. So that is called more and more of the light behind shines forth. Or it is its nature to shine. Very important point again. Atman is called Swayam Jyoti. To manifest, it is the very nature of Atman. Though we find there is a struggle in man, but the Atman is more powerful than the nature. It is his very nature to struggle. If we act or think in correspondence with that, this will become early. That is the only question of time. If we act or think wrongly, it becomes obstructed, but it cannot remain obstructed forever. Atman is more powerful than Maya or nature. And so, Swamiji says, it is its very nature to shine. It cannot be known in when we try to know it. Know means I am the subject knowing the object. If I am infinite, where is the object to be known? If my reality is infinite, how can I stand aside and know it? So knowing is secondary. Knowing is distorting the nature of the reality. That is the main problem in life. We have to understand. All scientists and philosophers have to understand that when they try to understand the world, we take it to be objectively real and we take it ourselves as the subject. But the reality becoming our reality, and the same reality is the reality of the whole world, that we have found out already. So, we cannot know it as subject knows the object, because that is not the object at all. This is true of not only knowing, but all our relations. All our devotional relations with God do not stand unless we know that we are going to merge in Him. This I separate will vanish in Him. It cannot be known. In vain we try to know it. Were it knowable, it would not be what it is. If it knowable means an object, then it cannot be my reality. Swamiji's argument is so simple in appearance and so strong in its effect. For it is the eternal subject. Subject also not in the subject-object sense. Eternal subject means the reality itself. Everything else is appearance, so it is known to that subject. Knowledge is a limitation. Knowledge is objectifying. Yes, knowledge means objectifying, means limitation. Infinite becomes limited if we try to know it. He is the eternal subject of everything. So the drashta, the subject, the reality is He. He knows me, not that I know Him. There is a beautiful story told about it. It refers to one of the past presidents, most revered Swami Vireshwaranandaji Maharaj. People found out by calculation that when Swami Vivekananda returned from America to Chennai, this Vireshwarananda, as a boy, was student in Chennai. So somebody asked him, "You must have seen him somewhere in some sabha." Vireshwananji replies, "I have no memory of such a thing, but I am sure that he must have seen me. And that has influenced me to become a sadhu like that." So, another example. When Swami Vivekananda returned from West, and by train, he was passing through several stations in Tamil Nadu. There was a small station, Manmudurai or some small station, where the train was not supposed to stop. But a group of people, led by a military man, Suryaji Rao, took upon themselves to make the train stop. And they stood on the track. So the driver had to forcibly stop the train. Swamiji came to the door of the compartment. These people garlanded him and said, "We do not want to detain you. We just wanted to have your darshan. Now you may go." In that crowd, Swamiji's eyes fell upon a young man, this military man, Suryaji Rao. And Swamiji looked at it intently. He was the leader of that gang, you may say. Now Swamiji looked at it. And the train passed away. Swamiji went away. Now that Swamiji looking at him made such an impact on this man that he decided to quit the military. Now it is not easy to quit the military when you join it, unless you are disabled. Now he was a very able-bodied man. So he started behaving as if he has become mad. Nowadays if somebody is mad, we give him electric shocks. In those days they used to put ice on the head. So they started putting ice on his head. And any amount of ice they put, he was not changing. So the doctor declared he is incurably mad. And that is how he got discharged from the military. And the moment he got discharged from the military, he started walking and went to where Swamiji was living in Calcutta and wanted to meet Swamiji. Swamiji was taking rest in the afternoon. So the people at the door told him, "You have come, you take rest, you take bath." He said, "No, I have come to meet Swamiji. I will first see him. If he is taking rest, let him take rest. I will wait here." Swamiji heard this and he called him up. "And what do you want to become?" "I want to become your disciple." Then Swamiji tested him in various ways and made him his disciple. His name was Nishchayananda. So Swamiji looked at him and that transformed him. And so he is the eternal subject. Personally it has to be understood. It has to be understood through personal experiences. Then only we catch the meaning. The eternal witness in this universe, your own self. Witness, what is witness? Normally when we experience something, our mind changes. When we experience something, it has effect on us also. But the reality being unchanging, one without a second, it experiences everything, it does not change. That is called witness. Eternal witness in this universe, your own self. Knowledge is, as it were, a lower step, a degeneration. We are that eternal subject already. How can we know it? How can it be made an object? It is the real nature of every man and is struggling to express it in various ways. Our whole life, Swamiji is telling, history of man is struggle to express it. We do not know what we are doing. If we know it consciously, then we succeed quickly. Otherwise, why are there so many ethical codes? So all the ethics was made to deny the lower self so that the higher self will shine. Where is the explanation of all ethics? One idea stands out at the center of all ethical systems, expressed in various forms, namely doing good to others. That means lose your small self. That is the meaning of doing good to others. The guiding motive of mankind should be charity towards men, charity towards all animals. But these are all various expressions of that eternal truth that I am the universe. Now I am the universe and I feel I am the small self. And so, in order to give up this small self, I should serve others. In order to give up the pride that I am a man, I should be feeling unity with the animals also. This universe is one, yes, because the reality of the entire universe is one without a second. The universe is one. Or else, where is the reason why I should do good to others? Why should I do good to my fellow men? Why should I do good to others? What compels me? It is sympathy, the feeling of sameness everywhere. As the word sympathy comes, I want to narrate a funny incident. When we were in the training center in the Belur Math, in a classroom, some brahmachari was sitting in front of me. I was maybe on the last line. And he coughed. After the class, I told him, my friend, you are having bronchitis. Please consult doctor immediately. He said, no, a small thing you are making big. I am already getting doctor's treatment from the dispensary. Now, within a few days, we were all examined before Brahmacharya Diksha. And the examining doctor told him, for how many days you are carrying bronchitis? Then he came to me and said, how did you know? Do you know allopathy or homeopathy? I said, no, I have sympathy. That means when I had bronchitis, I had cough like this. Hearing your cough, I identified with that and told you are having bronchitis. This is sympathy. To experiencing what the other man is experiencing. To experience as if you are experiencing. That is the step towards realization of Atman. It is sympathy, the feeling of sameness everywhere. The hardest heart feels sympathy for other beings sometimes. Even the man who gets frightened if he is told that this assumed individuality is really a delusion, that it is ignoble to try to cling to this apparent individuality, that very man will tell you that extreme self-abnegation is the center of all morality. In Karma Yoga there was a chapter, if you remember, that non-attachment can be achieved only by self-abnegation. That means, if I is there, my will be there. So if I is negated totally, if I is not believed at all, if I is not accepted at all, then that is morality. This idea of me and mine, ahankar and mamata. Ahankar means I, mamata means mine, is the result of past superstition. Past, how many past? Eternally past. Always I have been I, though it is changing continuously, this I is sticking to me. And as soon as there is I, there is mine. So this is called past superstition, means not real. And the more this present self passes away, the more the real self becomes manifest. So the loss of small individuality or the apparent individuality only will lead to the realization of reality. It will not end in nihilism, please. because the real nature of man is always there. If you remove the small self, you will not go to zero. If you remove the small self, the real self will shine. But if you do not remove the small self, you will die. And the more this present self passes away, present unreal, the more the real self becomes manifest. If that is real, then this is unreal. This is true self-abnegation. So, self means small self, abnegation means not accepting it philosophically. So, self-abnegation, true. The center, the basis, the gist of all moral teaching. So, every moral teaching finally comes to this: don't think of yourself, think of others. Others apparently. And whether man knows it or not, the whole world is slowly going towards it, practicing it more or less. Even in a family, when we try to adjust with others, we have to give up ourselves. In society, if we have to live in harmony, we have to give up ourselves. So knowingly or unknowingly, we are practicing more or less. Only the vast majority of mankind are doing it unconsciously. They are not aware that the final goal is to manifest this reality within. So unconsciously they are struggling. Let them do it consciously. Let them make the sacrifice, knowing that this me and mine is not the real self, but only a limitation. About sacrifice, I will tell you a story. How by knowledge it becomes real. Swami Brahmananda, Sri Ramakrishna's dear disciple, some person having the noble title of Raja, king of a small state, came and prostrated himself before Brahmananda Swami. Brahmananda Swami smiled and said, "Why so much respect here?" He said, "To whom shall I show respect? You are such a big Tyagi, the great renouncer." Raja Maharaj laughed and said, "If you are saluting renunciation, I have to roll before you. Because what I have given up, that which is not real I have given up. And that which is real you have given up in pursuit of the unreal. So you are a greater Tyagi." So Brahman Swamiji is trying to show that what you call renunciation is a simple nature for the man who understands. Sacrifice, knowing that this me and mine is not the real self, but only a limitation. But one glimpse of that infinite reality which is behind, one spark of that infinite fire, that is the all, represents the present man. Glimpse means a little of awareness is in us, that is man. The infinite is his true nature. So that expresses a little. Now, some important questions. First question Swamiji has dealt with is fear of loss of individuality. And he has replied by showing that that is the real individuality, we are not individuals yet. Now the next question, what is the utility, the effect, the result of this knowledge? That is a tendency in man. For example, when we do some karma, Vedic karma, we know that the result will be Sarga. Now what is the use of this knowledge? That is the question asked. And now Swamiji will reply to it. In these days, we have to measure everything by utility. What is utility? By how many pounds, shillings and pence it represents. That is the British money, pound, shilling, pence. And Swamiji is talking in London. dollars or rupees in other countries. So, utility means earning money. Utility means worldly wealth. That is our idea. And if it increases that, it is useful. If it does not increase it, it is useless. What right has a person to ask that truth should be judged by the standard of utility or money? How do you judge that it is truth? Only when it brings you more money. Suppose there is no utility, will it be less true? So it should be judged on the basis of truth, not utility. Because it is true, I want it. Because you will give money, I don't want it. Utility is not the test of truth. Now Swamiji turns around and says it has the highest utility. All problems in life are vanishing. The bliss which is my nature is being manifested. What will this money give me? Some pleasure. But the eternal mine of bliss is my real nature. And if that is manifested, what more do I want? So, not the worldly utility which we seek, but the real utility. When Yajnavalkya was leaving his house, addressing his wife Maitreyi, he said, he had 2 wives, so I shall divide the money equally and give to you. Will you be satisfied? She asked that if you give me the whole world full of wealth, will I get immortality? Because I see you are giving up this wealth, so you have got something much higher. Will I get that? Yajnavalkya replied, by money, Maitreyi, you will never hope for immortality. By money, your life will be very psychological reply. By money, your life will be like the life of those who have resources. How they use the resources, whether they become happy or not, is not by money. Nevertheless, there is the highest utility in this. Happiness, we see, is what everyone is seeking for. But the majority seek it in things which are evanescent and not real. Evanescent, passing away, money and everything, and not real. No happiness was ever found in the senses. There never was a person who found happiness in the senses or in enjoyment of the senses. Happiness is only found in the spirit, because that is the nature of that spirit. It is not only existence and consciousness, it is bliss, because it is one without a second. Therefore, the highest utility for mankind is to find this happiness in the spirit. Beautiful. Utility point, Swamiji has replied in 2 ways. That your worldly utility is no utility at all. In the Taittiriya, a question has been raised, how do you understand that Brahman, the real nature of man, is bliss? To that Swami Vivekananda replied, we have seen the people who have realized Brahman, whatever other people use for getting happiness, these people have none of it, and yet they are happy always. About Sri Ramakrishna, in spite of his cancer and everything, Holy Mother has certified that I saw him, Sada, like him, Sadananda Purush I have not seen. Even for a moment I have not seen him bereft of joy. So, that is the utility. Therefore, the highest utility for mankind is to find this happiness in the spirit. The next point is, this very thing put in other side. The next point is that ignorance is the great mother of all misery. Ignorance means wrong knowledge. And wrong knowledge about ourselves and the world. This is the root of all misery. It only increases the desire without satisfying it. And the fundamental ignorance is to think that the infinite weeps and cries, fundamental ignorance. Infinite my real self. And I weep and I cry. That he is finite is the fundamental ignorance. This is the basis of all ignorance, that we, the immortal, the ever pure, the perfect spirit, think that we are little minds, that we are little bodies. It is the mother of all selfishness. Selfishness because we are like this. As soon as I think that I am a little body, I want to preserve it, to protect it, to keep it nice at the expense of other bodies. Then you and I become separate. As soon as the idea of separation comes, it opens the door to all mischief and leads to all misery. All mischief depends upon I am separate from you. And that is the cause of all misery. Everyone can see it in his life. This is the utility, that if a very small fractional part of human beings, now utility from society point of view Swami is showing. He has already shown the utility from individual point of view. This is the utility, that if a very small fractional part of human beings living today can put aside the idea of selfishness, narrowness and littleness, this earth will become a paradise tomorrow. But with machines and improvements of material knowledge only, it will never be. This is the madness, which only think that by adding external things I will be happy. These only increase misery. As oil poured on fire increases the flame all the more, because the desires multiply. Without the knowledge of the Spirit, all material knowledge is only adding fuel to the fire, only giving into the hands of selfish man one more instrument to take what belongs to others, truly upon the life of others, instead of giving up his life for them. Now, if you look to this society with open eyes, if you look to the media, if you look to this corona pandemic, you will find this Swamiji saying 100% true. I need not add, those who are wise know it well. How persons for their selfishness want to destroy the world, you can see clearly. Next question. Next question is, all this is all right, but can it be realized? Is it practical is another question, which Swami has discussed at great length in Practical Vedanta, which you have read. Can it be practiced in modern society? This is another foolish notion. And Swamiji will hit upon it clearly. I remember an incident. In Chandigarh, in the local DAV college, which was once upon thought to be the ideal institution, they invited me for Independence Day lecture or Republic Day lecture. And in the lecture I talked about certain these points. And after the lecture, when there was a gathering, taking tea together, one professor asked me, is it practical today? Then I told him, what is practical? Doing frauds is more practical. Being corrupt is more practical. And I gave him several examples. I am tempted to share a small example from practical life. I don't know whether that person is attending my class today. I have a friend, M. Ravi, Tamil Nadu. He was a BCom graduate. He got trained under some building contractor. And when he thought he is able to do, he floated his first tender in PWD department in Tamil Nadu. And his first tender was accepted. And it was great rejoicing in his house. Then the PWD officers came to his house and said, it seems you are a new in this trade. So we want to tell you something which we could not tell in the office. Suppose 50 bags of cement are sanctioned for a place. You have to spend only 25 of them. 5 bags you spend to this officer, 5 bags to this clerk, 5 bags you can keep yourself. Now what did this man do? Consulting his wife. Next day he surrendered that tender. If a tender is not accepted, your earnest money you get back. But if it is accepted, surrendering that means not only losing this contract, but losing that money also. And he shifted to some other business which he thought will not involve any corruption. This story I told there in the DV college. This is real man. Let me add something personal. I knew his father-in-law, mother-in-law well. From them only I had come to know of him. So when I heard this from his father-in-law, when I went to their house in Trichy, the father-in-law was narrating what my son-in-law did. And the mother-in-law was weeping of joy. What grace of God that we got such a son-in-law. Anyway, is it practical is another question. Can be practiced in modern society? Now Swamiji's famous statement, truth does not pay homage to any society, ancient or modern. Society has to pay homage to truth or die. Society should be molded upon truth. And truth has not to be adjusted itself to society. If such a noble truth as unselfishness cannot be practiced in society, it is better for man to give up society and go into forest. That is not escapism. That is the daring man. These are two sorts of courage. One is the courage of facing the cannon, and the other is the courage of spiritual conviction. An emperor who invaded India was told by his teacher to go and see some of the sages there. This is literally a derived story because Alexander could not reach India. About his person who came to India was Megasthenes, and Megasthenes had a deputy Seleucus. So the story is about Seleucus most probably, maybe about Megasthenes also, not about Alexander. But that was the spirit behind the story. An emperor who invaded India was told by his teacher Aristotle. That is how Alexander is connected. When Alexander started conquering the world, he asked his guru Aristotle, what should I bring from India? And the guru told him, bring Ganges water and bring a sage from there. We require such a sage. And so he was told by his teacher to go and see some of the sages there. After a long search for one, he found a very old man sitting on a block of stone. And that man's name has never come out. The emperor talked with him a little and became very much impressed by his wisdom. He asked the sage to go to his country with him. No, said the sage, I am quite satisfied with my forest here. Said the emperor, I will give you money, position, wealth. I am the emperor of the world. On behalf of the emperor he is telling. No, replied the man, I don't care for those things. The emperor replied, if you do not go, I will kill you. The man smiled serenely and said, that is the most foolish things you ever said, emperor. You cannot kill me. Me the sun cannot dry, fire cannot burn, sword cannot kill, for I am the birthless, the deathless, the ever-living, omnipotent, omnipresent spirit. This is spiritual boldness. while the other is the courage of a lion or a tiger. Another example, in the mutiny of 1857, it was called the mutiny. Now we know it was the independence struggle. There was a Swami, a very great soul, whom a Mohammedan mutineer stabbed severely. He was also a mutineer. But that spirit came between Muslim and Hindu and he stopped him. The Hindu mutineers caught and brought the man to the Swami, offering to kill him. But the Swami looked up calmly and said, "My brother, thou art he, and expired. So even at the point of death, he knows the same God is in all. This is boldness. This is another instance. What good is it to talk of the strength of your muscles, of the superiority of your Western institutions, if you cannot make truth square with your society? If you cannot build up a society into which the highest truth will fit, what is the good of this boastful talk about your grandeur and greatness? If you stand up and say, this courage is not practical, is nothing practical but pound, shillings and pence? If so, why boast of your society? That society is the greatest, where the highest truths become practical. So that is the very definition of society. If the highest truths can be practiced, that society is great. That is my opinion. And if society is not fit for the highest truth, make it so. And the sooner, the better. Stand up, men and women, in the spirit. Dare to believe in the truth, dare to practice the truth. The world requires a few hundred bold men and women. Practice that boldness which dares know the truth, which dares show the truth to life, which does not quake before death, nay, welcomes death, makes a man know that he is the spirit, that in the whole universe nothing can kill him. Then you will be free. So the result is freedom. Then you will know your real soul. This Atman is first to be heard, then thought about, and then meditated upon. Shravan Manan Nyasan is what Swamiji ends. Now one small point. True about everybody, including Ramakrishna Mission. There is a great tendency in modern times to talk too much of work and decry thought. Doing is very good, but that comes from thinking. Little manifestations of energy through the muscles are called work, but where there is no thought, there will be no work. Fill the brain, therefore, with high thoughts, highest ideals. Place them day and night before you, and out of that will come great work. Talk not about impurity, but say that we are pure. We have hypnotized ourselves into this thought that we are little, that we are born, and that we are going to die, into a constant state of fear. Hypnotized ourselves by thinking like this again and again and being taught like this again and again. There is a story about a lioness who was big with young, that means pregnant, going about in search of prey, and seeing a flock of sheep, she jumped upon them, and she died in the effort, and a little baby lion was born motherless. It was taken care of by the sheep, and the sheep brought it up, and it grew up with them, ate grass, and bleated like the sheep. And although in time it became a big, full-grown lion, it thought it was a sheep. One day another lion came in search of prey and was astonished to find that in the midst of this flock of sheep was a lion, fleeing like the sheep at the approach of danger. He tried to get near the sheep-lion to tell it that it was not a sheep, but a lion. But the poor animal fled at his approach. However, he watched his opportunity and one day found the sheep-lion sleeping. He approached it and said, "You are a lion." "I am a sheep," cried the other lion, and could not believe the contrary, but bleated. The lion dragged him towards a lake and said, "Look here is my reflection and yours." Then came the comparison. It looked at the lion and then at its reflection, own reflection, and in a moment came the idea that it was a lion. The lion roared, the bleating was gone. You are lions, you are souls, you are infinite and perfect. The might of the universe is within you. Why weepest thou, my friend? There is another birth, there is neither birth nor death for thee. Why weepest thou? There is no disease nor misery for thee, but thou art like the infinite sky. Clouds of various colors come over it, play for a moment, then vanish. But the sky is ever the same, eternal blue. Why do we see wickedness? There was a stump, now another example. Why do we see wickedness outside? There was a stump of a tree, and in the dark a thief came that way and said, that is a policeman. A young man waiting for his beloved saw it and thought it was his sweetheart. A child who had been told ghost stories took it for a ghost and began to shriek. But all the time it was the stump of a tree. We see the world as we are. Another example, suppose there is a baby in a room with a bag of gold on the table and a thief comes and steals the gold. Would the baby know it was stolen? That which you are inside we see outside. The baby has no thief inside and she is no thief outside. So with all knowledge, do not talk of the wickedness of the world and all its sins. Weep that you are bound to see wickedness yet. Weep that you are bound to see sin everywhere. So not only about yourself, about the whole world, the whole consciousness will change totally. And if you want to help the world, do not condemn it. Do not weaken it more. For what is sin and what is misery and what are all these but the results of weakness? The world is made weaker and weaker every day by such teachings. Men are taught from childhood that they are weak and sinners. Teach them that there are glorious children of immortality, Amritasya Putra, even those who are the weakest in manifestation. Let positive, strong, helpful thought enter into their brain from very childhood. That is called positive. Lay yourselves open to these thoughts and not to weakening and paralyzing ones. Yourself open to such thoughts. Say to your own minds, I am he, I am he. Let it ring day and night as in your minds like a song, and at the point of death declare, I am he. That is the truth. The infinite strength of the world is yours. Drive out the superstition that has covered your minds. Let us be brave. Know the truth and practice the truth. The goal may be distant, that is, Swamiji agrees. But awake, arise, and stop not till the goal is reached. This is also from Kathopanishad, Uttishtata Jagrata, Prapyavaranyabodhata. So Swamiji has brought us to the level of realizing our real nature. Thanks to Swami Vivekananda. And we shall go to the next lecture on the next day. Om Paratatve Sadalino Ramakrishna Samagya Yo Dharma Sthapana Rato Viresham Tam Namamyam. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om Tat Sat. Shri Ramakrishna Arpanamastu.
Namarat.